Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. After the brutal murder of her twin sister, Darcy goes after those responsible by using haunted items as her tools of revenge. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Oddity. Well, Luke, we have reached another pinnacle moment here on 2024's Splattercast calendar. Because this is another one of those festival darlings that I kept hearing about, and I remember I told you about, and then we've just been kind of keeping tabs on it, and finally landed in our lap a few weeks ago. Yes, Oddity, folks. This is kind of the next big one, I would say, from Shudder IFC after In a Violent Nature. So, we're going from the slasher, silent walking through the woods film into a spooky, suspenseful thriller. And yeah, this was one I was definitely anticipating. I did a little top 6 films you should look out for in July, and this was number 1. So, Luke, where were you sitting with Oddity leading into it?
I was certainly intrigued with it. I stayed away from a lot of stuff. We got the email, so I had seen the poster, and I found that rather intriguing. And then, you did the top 6 films. And really, other than that, I stayed away from this one because it sounded like it was really my cup of tea. And I got to say, 2024 is easily my year of when I turn on a film and I see the Shudder logo followed by IFC Films. My mouth starts watering. It's like Pavlov's dog of like, it's just been a stellar year for Shudder and IFC Films. And to be honest, Oddity's no different. This one was rather exciting. There's a lot of tension here. Through and through, this film is so well done.
Yeah, and I mean, that was kind of the, ever since, I would say, In a Violent Nature, I know that was controversial for people, but like, you really get to reflect on the streak that they've had this year. So I also get that way whenever they pop up in our inbox, and it's like, okay, cool, new Shudder release, let's check it out. I mean, with the exception of, I think the Night Watch sequel, which we thought was fine, it didn't blow our minds, but it was still not a bad movie. Like, everything they've released is solid. So I also get a little bit of trepidatious too, because I'm like, oh man, this is a hell of a streak. So I'm always waiting for that one to really knock it down, but Oddity did not do that for me. No. And I got to expose myself a little bit early to Caveat. That was something that with our buddy Alex at Beyond the Void podcast, he said, hey, this is one you guys got to check out. So I made sure to check it out before Oddity. And yeah, I love that as well. So I really can say, after walking out of this film and sitting with it, that I am really, really excited to see where Damian McCarthy's career goes post this film. Because I think if there's anybody who should be doing like supernatural big ghost films, like I think I said to you, this is what The Conjuring should have been as far as tone goes. Like, this is the guy that we need to be looking to, because he understands tension and dread and the paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a film where you could easily take this as a blueprint for how a ghost story should be told. I am a big fan of the first Conjuring. What has followed in the Conjuring films, I'm not the biggest fan of them. A lot of them just did not hit for me. But when you look at this, there's such a craft to having a smaller film, building that tension and telling just a well-crafted ghost story here. And this is what this is. He brings that tension. And I got to be honest, Damian McCarthy, for me, was a complete blind spot. I had no idea. I hadn't seen Caveat. I'm halfway through it. The wife wants to finish it. So I got to say, it's a nail biter. So, right in line with Oddity, he just knows how to tell the story and build the tension, because this thing opens up. And, it's about 11 minutes before we actually get the Oddity title card for this thing. And the scenario that opens up, which kind of puts all these events in place, is so tension-filled. It gives you almost this impossible decision that one of our characters has to make here. And when you put yourself psychologically in that, again, this is a ghost story, but there's also so many psychological elements to it that it pulls you in so many different directions. But when we meld it all together, it's such a wonderful soup of a ghost story that we have here.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think a lot of that has to go to the cast in this as well. I think that it's a very small cast, but I think a very competent one. I really loved Carolyn Beckard as Darcy. She is one of the twin sisters here, and I thought that she plays a very interesting character. Something that I didn't know about her character before going in, which I will not spoil, because I thought that that was just a very interesting take to bring to our main character, especially dealing with the subject matter of like the paranormal and haunted objects in a sense and what they mean. And you know, I thought that was really solid. I also got to say that I think his name was William Lee as Ted, who I won't say what his relationship is to anybody. Also, I loved his performance because he shifts a lot. So, and that's without spoiling anything. That's the most I can say. He's not one note. You know, he has layers to him that I did not expect at first. But going into the story as it unravels, it's not something that you don't see coming. I will say there's a little bit of an element of predictability on one side of the story. But I think that as it goes along, it just feels natural. It feels like it belongs. It's not, again, like it's not going to shock you at every turn, but it does feel very well orchestrated and really well done.
Yeah, you know, and I'll say, yeah, I think I agree with that predictability. There's kind of almost two different methods here where, in terms of predictability, where you can see where it's going and it's a red flag. It's like, I don't want you to go there. But then there's also, I think it might go here, and I hope that's where it goes because I think that would be the most interesting part of the story. And, you know, I think the payoff is there. You hit the nail on the head with these performances. Small cast, but they sell everything so well. Our character of Darcy is just someone who I don't want to say is fun, but you know, I'm rather intrigued by her throughout this, just from where she's coming from, those elements of the supernatural, and you know, we have this antique store of sorts. There is a little bellhop bell. I will say in this that it's not a big part of the story, but it is so much fun just because, as you mentioned, what the Conjuring film should have been. You know, a lot of times I think those films fall flat because, you know, we're focusing on an object that's not necessarily terrifying or doesn't have a unique story. And I'll say Oddity is the opposite of that. I think, you know, everyone has seen this wooden figure that we see, and that thing is downright terrifying. And when you see it throughout the film, it builds so much tension without it really doing anything because you're anticipating something happening. And when those scenes are just how well crafted they are with this wooden figure and any of the other characters that are in those scenes as well, it just has this eeriness. And I think that's one of the problems with some ghost stories is they are unable to harness the tension and create that eerie atmosphere. But Oddity, from the very beginning through the very end, really encapsulates that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that there is an element to this movie that I do think will be a kind of a tough pill to swallow for some people. And I don't mean that by like anything shocking or anything that's like, you know, oh my God, that's so traumatizing or anything. It is just something that, you know, you kind of get hints towards, you get expect. And when it actually happens, I feel like you have to be very much on board with it. And I think the film earns that personally. I could see people getting a little, thinking it's a little goofy by the time it starts. And, you know, I don't see that at all. I think that they do plenty of great scares, really inventive stuff to build up to that moment so that it really sells it. There is one film that I cannot say on here, but I do mention it in my 5 films you should watch before you see Oddity, which is up now if you want to check that out. Just if you're curious, I think you guys can guess what it is when we're talking large wooden figure. But there are many other great elements of tension and scares that I think will blow people's minds. Like there's one involving a camera. There's one involving, again, like you said, the bellhop, which is really cool. And yeah, there's a lot of great tension-filled moments through this, man. I love the way that Damien McCarthy sets up scares. I also gotta say, I love the color palette of this movie. The very like gray blue nature to it. It just feels cold, but then you'll juxtapose that with kind of the warm countryside house that they kind of have, the old English style house. And I think that they really aced that. This film is beautiful.
Yeah, honestly, as I was watching this, we had our endless discussions of the strangers and how that kind of has that warm tone to it on the inside of the home, and then you have this terror raining down on them, and I kept getting those vibes here of this kind of warm hominess throughout some of this when we're inside the house. It quickly switches into this odd eeriness, but you kind of go back and forth with that of it seems like a very homey place, but then you're also scared to be there in terms of melding that eeriness in here. I think this thing is beautifully shot. This is like an old-timey home that I believe they're renovating, I think, at the start there. And I absolutely love the way this looks. When I talked about that opening scene with this impossible choice, I'll say there are some shots of the doorway, and
Yes.
it instantly caught my eye of, whoa, this is a really nice setup here. Because again, when we do go in these smaller films, sometimes you can really feel that budget constraint. It doesn't necessarily look as visually pleasing as you would like for it to be, but this one has that kind of grandeur kind of stage to it here, and there's some gravitas here, so I think this is rather intriguing. I think you can get lost in the story. It's a very small ghost story, and I think those are the best kind here, of where we're really are secluded to one area for the most part and are really focusing on our kind of people story, but also adding in these supernatural elements. This is, like I said, is a blueprint, I think, for how a ghost story should be told, because I feel connected to our characters. I hate our characters at times. I'm supposed to hate them. And I'm also anticipating these scares. You mentioned that camera scare. I'll say that one really did get me. I was like waiting and waiting and waiting. And when you get the payoff there, I don't think you're even ready for it. So yeah, there's a handful of great scares in this one.
Yeah, I think that Oddity is definitely one you guys should seek out. It will be in limited select theaters this weekend, so definitely see if it's playing near you. I know it's playing at our Cinemark, so I think they're doing a good job of getting these films in at least a handful of bigger theater chains. So definitely, if you are into ghost stories, if you're into, ghost stories that aren't your typical Conjuring tales where it's like jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, it's this is totally for you. This is definitely one that will satisfy that itch you're looking for. But for me, I give this a very high recommend. I thought that this was a very solid outing for Damian McCarthy, and I am just so excited to see what he does next.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you on a high tier recommend on this one. This one really did it for me from a story perspective, from attention buildup, from that eeriness that you want to present in a ghost story. It is all here. Maybe a brief moment of predictability, but it is where I wanted the story to go. So I got to be honest. Yes, we still have a loaded back half of 2024. This one, honestly, I could easily see revisiting when we're talking about top 10 of the year. This one right now is in my top 10. Again, we have a big loaded back half here, so who knows what that's going to look like. But Oddity is something that if you're even on the fence about, which you shouldn't be because everything in this is stellar, go seek this one out. You're not going to be sorry you did. This is going to be, you can put this up there with a lot of ghost stories you've seen. And it's, I guess, a good time, if you want to say that. It's an eerie time, certainly. It's going to leave a lasting impression on you. So yes, high tier recommend. If this is playing near you, go check this out. And when it hits Shudder, make some time to check it out.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for our review of Oddity. Let us know down below if you've gotten a chance to see this film yet. And what do you think? Do you think that we are on the right path to saying this is kind of what we wanted from the Conjuring universe when that first film came out? Do you want to see more from Damian McCarthy? Or do you think that this just totally misses the marks and you want your Annabelles and your Nun films back? Let us know down below, because I don't think those are going to stop anytime soon. Even with the last Conjuring movie coming out. Who believes that, for real? Either way, got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. We got some top 5 lists out there. Again, like I said, this did top my films you should look out for July list. So go ahead and take a look at what else I recommended on there. There's still more to come. And of course, check out some of our other videos. We got a review Luke did on The Blue Rose, which for you David Lynch fans might scratch an itch. So check that one out. And yeah, I guess that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.